Hi, everyone. Welcome to the TimingResearch.com Analyze Your Trade, episode number 114 for February 18th, 2020. My name is David Cosmeter. I'm the creator of TimingResearch.com, and today we will be discussing your trade ideas. So over the last few days, about 40 people submitted up to 5 symbols each, and I put together the list of top requests, and we're going to go through as many of those as we can today. I have arranged for Matt Buckley and Jim Kenney to be here. And Jim will be moderating, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him.
Okay, great, and great to have everybody here. It's a big day here in some markets, and we're getting volatility to pick up just a little bit, but nothing to write home about. Today we've got Whiz Buckley with us. He's going to give us insight on the list, and about halfway through the list, we're going to ask him what he's kind of focused on and where he sees opportunity. So there's a lot to learn here. Get your pens and paper ready. Before we get started, Whiz, for the people uninitiated, could you give a little background on yourself and what you guys are doing at Top Gun?
You bet, Jim. Thanks for having me again, David. Great, always great to be here. Matthew Buckley, call sign Whiz, former FA-18 Hornet guy with the Navy, graduated from the Navy Fighter Weapons School, which many of you know as Top Gun. Self-taught trader. You don't join the Navy to be rich, you join the Navy to serve your country. But I was always interested in finance, so decided to teach myself how to trade while I was flying fighter jets and just applied everything I was doing in a fighter jet, being disciplined, managing risk, having a strategy, implementing tactics, contingency planning, and just applied it to my trading with some pretty damn good results. Popped up on the radar of one of the largest volatility arbitrage firms in the country, went up there, helped run that place for about 3 years, built my own essentially CNBC for options called the Options News Network. And then about 10 years ago, decided Chicago weather ain't for me. I'm a beach guy, a Navy guy, and decided to move down here to God's Waiting Room in Boca Raton, where we started Top Gun Options about 10 years ago. So teaching just folks of all skill levels how to fight in the options of trading combat, something like that.
Yeah. And there's a lot to learn. At the end of the broadcast, you'll let everybody know how to get a hold of you, and you'll probably have some special offers as well.
You bet.
But let's just jump in here now, and let's start out with Apple, which obviously had a huge run. But when 50% of your factory workers aren't going to work, which is what the story I heard out of China is, that obviously can have an effect on that supply chain. So what are you seeing here in Apple?
Well, it's interesting, folks, because like Jim said, look at the run up in Apple here, and then it's done nothing. This is hovering, right? It's got this, 325, 330-ish roof, and this, 315 base here. As Jim just said, folks, and where's earnings? Earnings should be on here. Earnings. The last Apple earnings, I don't think I've ever seen a more obscene earnings report. It was insane. To the upside. It was fantastic. Their earnings could not have been better. The problem with that, so here's, the blue line is the 50-day moving average, the red's the 200-day moving average. The problem, so in earnings, one of the main reasons I usually don't trade earnings, folks, is because you're throwing darts. I mean, earnings is kind of a guess. How many of you have, gotten earnings right? Like, hey, they had blowout earnings. Hey, I'm right. And you lost money because the stock does it. Usually an earnings call is 50-50. Usually the heavy's on the phone, the CFO, the CEO, whoever it is, and gives you the last quarter, right? And then the second half of the call. This is why sometimes in after-hours trading, you see a stock rip one way and then do the exact opposite. If you've ever wondered why, this is why. Because the second half of the call is supposed to be their forward guidance. For the first time in 28 years of doing this, I heard a 95-5 call. It was 95%, hey, look over here, squirrel. Shiny red ball, look at what we did. This was at the height, folks, of this coronavirus. Finally, some reporter got around to asking, like, yeah, how's this all going to impact you? Great question. Next, moving on, did you see what we did last quarter? It was insanely bad. So not to fault Apple too much. What else would you, if you were the CEO or the CFO on a conference call like that, are you going to sit there and go, oh my God, we're all going to die? Of course you're not. You can't. But here's the problem. As Jim said, a fifth of their revenue comes from a country that is shut down. A couple hours ago, Russia becomes the first country to ban all Chinese from entering. Okay, so not only do they get a fifth of their revenue from a company that country that shut down. Hey, guess what, folks? Those 10 and 11-year-old kids that get paid a nickel to make your $1,000 iPhone aren't going to work. And oh, by the way, the precious minerals that go in that iPhone, 35% of the precious minerals that go into electronics around the world come from China. It's over with for Apple, at least for this quarter. Now, Apple was brilliant yesterday. I'm driving, it was a long President's Day weekend. I was over in Tampa with my son for a hockey tournament, driving across Alligator Alley, listening to CNBC, Fox Business, getting all my intel going. Apple came out yesterday when the markets were closed and came out and said this, duh. Right? Unless you've been living on the other side of Mars for the past month, you know that Apple has to take a hit on this. It's physically impossible not to. So what would you expect to happen today? Apple to go down, right? Well, it did. And what did we do here at Top Gun Options? We put on a bull put spread out the Friday, and we're up $900 into the close. Wait, what? That makes no sense, Wiz. You're getting bullish on Apple? Yep. So, because here's the number one reason why I'm, first of all, short-term bullish. And who was it? Leon Cooperman, big investor, was on CNBC today. Everybody, all the quote smart money, and Jim, you can chime in as well. The smart money is more or less writing off the first quarter. Like, it's a mulligan, okay? Assuming that things are going to get better with this virus, that this is just a blip. In the old days, Jim and I would see, news like this, the stock would implode, it would bottom feed for a little bit, and then we'd go, oh, look, they might have a cure, or China's looking better, let's jump in and buy it. We're skipping that whole old stock marketness for this new stuff. The number one holding in 2019 of hedge funds was Apple, and currently is. So the institutions, folks, the hedge funds, the Leon Coopermans, the family offices, the Jeffrey Gunlocks folks, they're not you. Okay, so everybody listening on here, unless Jeffrey's on here or Leon, they don't have a laptop and they're sitting there trading like us. When they want to dump their 100,000 shares of Apple, you ever hear of an investment? I've been in these rooms. I've been in a meeting with 28 people that are making a decision about a name. So I'm bullish short-term and long-term on Apple, which flies in the face of math. So, and I'm taking a while on this because I have to tell you that the last time, in my opinion, the market traded, let me pull the SPX back up here, in reality was here when, holy crap, the entire country of China shut down. Implosion. Dead bat bounce, not a dead cat. We're talking about bats. Dead bat bounce to the 50-day 3-day short squeeze and central bank intervention. Like Jim and I were just talking about before we jumped on the air, all reality has left the building. I'm telling you, old stock market, this type of pre-warning out of Apple would cause the stock to implode. Not what to do today, 1% or 2%? Yeah, I think it was down at worst 3% today. So right now, folks, the institutions and a lot of folks are holding this up and ignoring reality. And I used this analogy earlier, Jim. Right now, Apple, in my opinion, is playing musical chairs. There's a lot of money swirling around a bunch of chairs, and we're all looking at each other going, when the music stops, if it stops on Apple, I want to have a seat. Okay, so it's going to take for Apple to implode. If you're sitting here staring at your screen going, dude, I don't get this. The country shut down. Their workers ain't working. They ain't making these things, and the stock's up here. It will stay up here until there's an event. Well, this was an event. No, I mean like somebody big coming out and saying we're done, or Donald Trump or Xi coming out and saying like, yeah, this was a biological weapon that accidentally got out. Until then, I think it stays up. So be very, very careful trading Apple here, because you don't want to be the one who in this crowded theater of institutional investors and hedge funds and JP Morgans and that own a lot of Apple. They're going to move first, not you. Matter of fact, I had a bear call spread on a couple of weeks ago because I'm like, Apple's got to go down. This is insane, and it lost money. You know what I did? I bought a big bag of opium and smoked it. And this is what you have to do. But if you don't enjoy that, if you don't like investing's over for a little bit. And here's why I say that, because some people are like, come on, Wiz, this is a short-term blip, and Apple's going to be back up and race. You have no idea. I don't know where we're going to get into it, Jim. You can drive a little bit, but this is not SARS. This is not Ebola. You guys are going to be shocked at what I tell you this is. So you can't be long-term bullish, folks, with something that you don't know is going on. And I'll leave it at that. So smoking hopium on Apple, if you don't like playing musical chairs and don't want to get caught without a seat, don't do it. Because when the math isn't working, folks, when a company says there's no way in hell we're going to make our earnings and the stock doesn't implode, it's not trading the way it should be. But last sentence, and then, Jim, you can jump in. If the market or Apple isn't doing what you think it should be doing, you're wrong, not it. So
Right.
Apple isn't wrong right now. But if you're staring at your screen with your head tilted 90 degrees, like does not compute, you got to rewire your circuitry because you're wrong. Price is price. So that's what's dangerous. Usually when you roll your head 90 degrees to the right and go, yeah, that ain't making sense, then don't do it. Okay? Me, I'm going to trade the hell out of it because I got a buddy who's a market maker in Apple. He's like, oh yeah, everybody knows that this is insanity that it's still up here and the math doesn't work, but nobody's turning off the music to grab a chair. So that's my take on Apple. Jim, what do you think?
Well, I mean, the volume is really not inordinate today. And I think if you're a trader, which is what you were talking about, anything that gaps down like that has the moving averages all positive. The 50 you saw is very up. And albeit it's overbought versus the 200, but it's a rising deal. You get a big gap down, then obviously it might come back up and fill the gap. And
Correct.
basically, I think that's what you were kind of betting on, is that it had gap down and it's going to pop back up and fill that gap up and then maybe roll over from there. But again, with the moving averages in such a positive way, this being one of the front runners in all the major indexes, and it was the poster child of alpha for most of these people, they're unwilling to just dump something that has 5G ahead of it and that it is the golden boy. So they're not going to get rid of
Correct.
Tom Brady, when Tom Brady got him 7 Super Bowls, and they know 5G is coming. So
Correct.
whatever's happening short term here, they feel like these guys, you can't give up a golden boy. And Microsoft, Google, and Apple, are 3 golden boys. They're hesitant to get rid.
It's you nailed it, man. And I can't stress this enough, folks. You are your own investment committee, or maybe you and your wife or your husband or whoever. You're not a massive hedge fund or large financial institution or a bank, one of these banks trading team that literally, all right, we have a meeting at 9:15 tomorrow morning about what we're going to do. These are big super tankers, folks. They got thousands of shares of Apple doing 30 knots in a super tanker. It takes a while to make a decision to bail from a golden boy like this. And if you do, either that creates a stampede after you, or it's a lot harder for people to ditch a high flyer than you or I would. That's why a couple of weeks ago, I'll be the first one to tell you when I have a losing trade. I'm like, look at the math. Apple's going down. Apple went up. Son of a, the stove's hot. So again, if it's not computing for you, don't do it. But to all the reasons Jim said, it's a golden boy. And for now, it's hovering. I mean, look at this. It's kind of this ledge. I mean, it had that meteoric year, and now we're kind of hypoxic up here, on the top of, I don't know, Mount Suribachi right now. So be very, very careful. But like Jim said, it's a little bit of a golden boy, and people don't like ditching those golden boys.
And seasonally, you still got money coming into the stock market. So every time you got people coming in with this passive investment, they go buy these indexes. The indexes have Apple right at the top of the list. So it's very difficult to have this thing break when the moving averages are strong, the seasonality is strong, and obviously the future with 5G is a very big carrot. And obviously they're going to give the bears the stick until they have to.
It's really going to be interesting to see, Trump getting on the Air Force One at Andrews earlier, the whole 5G thing, the national security. It's going to be an interesting debate to see, and the whole Huawei and all that stuff to see, where we come down on this 5G. But yeah, for now, I mean, this thing just to your point, it's you can't fight momentum. Why step? I like to say if something's on a tear, either join it or get out of the way. So
yeah. And
for
if
now,
this didn't have 5G coming up, maybe you will have more weakness because people would say,
true.
that there's no ace in the hole. Anyway,
I'd agree with
let's go to the polar opposite of Apple, which is Boeing. This is a company that obviously is doing the direct opposite of what Apple did, but it's held the 300 number, and it's a two horse race, and they've got more planes in their parking lot than Caesar's Palace has gamblers in their parking lot. At some point, just like with this the virus, at some
Yep.
point it's going to go away, and Apple's going to make a ton of money. At some
Mhm.
point, these people's problems are going to abate, and they're going to sell all these planes. That's the gamble. How do you see it?
Correct. Well, and I think that's the key word. Somewhere along here, or maybe with Boeing, I'll jump in and give you my tinfoil hat, black helicopter theory about what's going on. But again, kind of like with Apple, folks, earnings right here. Then they came out right around it. Look at this. You see this pop? You know what they came out and said right here? They didn't have one aircraft order in January. I'm like, wait, was that a misprint? Did I not? What? Not one aircraft order in January. So Jim said the magical number. The magical number on Boeing is 300. Just like I told you that Apple's kind of got that institutional, I'm going to say it's the same number, around 300. Boeing is also another widely held stock. Here's another reason. So short story long, always bullish on Boeing. The main reason is Uncle Sammy.
Yeah.
I flew a Boeing product for 15 years, and I flew a Boeing product at FedEx and American. It's Uncle Sammy, folks. 75% of the bomber tanker refueling fleet in the United States military has a B in front, is a Boeing product. So the MAX, and I love the way they said this, the whole, we're not, let's change the name. And the CEO's like, yeah, we ain't going to market our way out of this thing. As I said before about Boeing, and I can say this since I'm an aviator, aviation's a self-cleaning oven. 4 people should be dead right now, and those are the pilots. Everybody else, it's a horror. There was nothing wrong with the aircraft, man. When the autopilot runs away, guess what? The one guy, after they got control of the airplane, after it freaked out, or actually it did what it was supposed to do, and they thought it freaked out, guess what they did? They re-engaged the autopilot. 5 times in a row, the thing freaked out, and 5 times in a row after they flew it and got it stable, they re-engaged it, and then they flew it almost supersonic into the dirt. I'm sorry, man. Aviation 101. When you turn something on in the jet and something bad happens, you turn that thing off and you leave it off. Not a problem with the aircraft. They're going to come up with new simulators. They're going to fix the software. Here's the problem with over-automation is leading to guys and gals who don't know how to fly an airplane. So a lot of rambling going on there. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of institutional support for Boeing around the 300 level. And oh, by the way, Uncle Sam. Absolutely need to be, and Jim brings up a good point. I mean, God forbid this thing gets a hell of a lot worse than it is, and people ain't flying and ain't ordering airplanes. Then we're going to have a different webinar and talk about how to pound this thing into the dirt.
Yeah, then we'll talk about sub 300.
Yeah, exactly. Easily.
That's what blows you out under 300 is that travel really takes a big hit because this thing lasts a lot longer than expected. That's exactly Cooperman was saying 3 or 4 months, but he's probably talking his book. You know what I mean?
I saw that. Yeah. I thought the same thing when he talked about that. You see this little drill bit down here to 300? That was a little bit of, like a kid in the deep end putting a seat down trying to figure out where 300. If you break 300 with any serious airspeed, I don't even know where it's lookout below. Yeah. But again, this is like an Apple decision for a lot of institutional investors. We sit in a room and look around and go, do we get out of this thing? I don't think you get out of this thing. I mean, it was great. What was it, a year?
Not with a defense budget that Trump's working with.
I was just going to say, a year and a half ago, I was at the gym, and there's Donald Trump sitting in an F-18 up in St. Louis. I'm like, yeah. And he's sitting next to a Joint Strike Fighter. So, you and I haven't mentioned this yet, Jim. a month and a half ago, we were talking about Trump getting us into World War III and General Soleimani, and holy crap, we're all going to die. Now it's, then it was impeachment. Now it's coronavirus. So let's not forget that Iran, just because we're not talking about it right now, doesn't mean Iran like sent all their nuclear dudes home. Like, hey, nobody's paying attention to us. Everybody just let's call it a day. Stuff's still going on. There are a lot of potential bad guys around the world, and I think Boeing is a strong buy. Whenever you have the Uncle Sam put underneath you, it's a pretty good investment.
Yeah, the other thing is talking
opinion.
about government contracts. Oracle is up for some contracts, and I don't think it's coincidental that Ellison is, partying or sponsoring a ton of Trump parties this week over in California.
Yeah,
it's not because he's the good Samaritan. You know what I mean?
I think there was one down here in Palm Beach. Was it like $562,000 a couple or something crazy?
Yeah. But this Oracle, if there's a big government contract there, and the stock has been trying to hold 50, it's at 55.
Yeah.
I'd keep an eye on that, because if it goes their way, that could be a big thing. These government contracts are very valuable to these companies.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
All right. One of the FANG stocks here, I haven't been watching it too long, is Netflix. The story generally has been that their content creation money is a tremendous amount of a draw to them. But the stock just keeps going through the roof, and their memberships, I think overseas, are still growing quite a bit. And maybe with everyone not at work over in China, they're at home buying Netflix. Who knows what they're doing?
That's, you know what, Jim? Exactly.
Renting movies.
Yes, exactly. Well, that is part of the so all bottom line up front. I don't trade Netflix. I don't get the. Here's why I don't get it. Is who was it? Iger, the Disney CEO, when he came out with Disney Plus or whatever it was. He's like, our only competition is hours in the day, meaning, we can have enough people in this pool. But it is going to be finite at some point. I stopped trading Netflix years ago when I just didn't understand. I don't get the math. I mean, Disney has 10 times more content than Netflix, and it costs for a third of Netflix per month. And there's the Netflix chart. So got to be honest with you, I don't watch it. Jim brings up a great point about if people are confined around the world due to a virus, I guess Netflix revenues are going to go up. But I don't get the Roku, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Netflix content space. I'm not in it enough to give an educated answer. I would have thought, Disney and Amazon would take and put these kind of smaller guys out of business, but I've been wrong. So I'm not going to fish in this one. I don't have any 2 cents in it. I'd rather deploy my capital somewhere else than in a crowded streaming space. But listening to the heavies like Iger, he's like, it's not crowded. I'm like, when I turn on my smart TV, there's like 50 icons of where to watch content. I guess we can put another 50 icons. I don't get it. But that's
the next one is a tech in applied material, and the semiconductor index, had a huge run. It has stalled out, and applied material pretty much is in the same boat, which is a stock that has really, really risen and has stalled out a little bit. And then basically you got to say to yourself, was that peak up at 70 the peak? Because it does look like that now. But again, if it blows out 70, you're back in the ball game. And if it blows out, 60, so it's really in a 70-60 game right now.
It is. It's a good range bound trade. You got to like the trend here. It's just kind of a nice what was that on The Price is Right, the mountain climber game. The guy kind of yodeling up the hill here. He's kind of yodeling up, but Jim's got a good point. If the guy falls off the end here and hits that middle of that Keltner channel and also the 50-day moving average with some airspeed, we're gonna get down. The semis are another one that I just don't hunt in. I get them. I get the business models and everything like that. But at the end of the day, and hopefully it's on our list, I didn't look at, we're talking about an Amazon, because at the end of the day, we should start seeing some consolidation in these big guys. You brought up Oracle a little while ago. I would think that we start seeing some of that. And also, to be honest with you, we also have some China issues. These guys do get a lot of their stuff that goes in those things from China. I remember, I forget how long ago it was, whenever it was, that China did the whole hey, by the way, U.S. semiconductor companies, we make 35% of the world's stuff that goes in, all your cool stuff, and we're shutting that off. Now, of course, that would be biting off their nose to spite their face, but I don't think that was an idle threat. So I'm not big in the semi space. I deploy my capital somewhere else, but I think Jim's pretty spot on with the technical analysis.
Yeah, they got about $20 above the 200-day average. So again, a lot of these companies, people are looking at the charts and they're saying, listen, the moving averages are still pointing up. The company reported a decent earnings, and according to people that are in the market, as Cooperman was saying, the market is saying that this is going to be transitory.
Yeah.
But the markets didn't go to Johns Hopkins University. So
I'm glad you said that. All right, then maybe
they don't work at the Mayo Clinic, right?
No. Well, and yeah, that's exactly right. I'm glad he said that too, because as he was sitting there, I'm like, this dude ain't a virologist, and then he said kind of along those lines.
Yeah.
Leon Cooperman and all these folks, I got to be honest with you, the way they are positioned, the guy runs his quote own family office here, folks. The market right now is priced for absolute flawless execution right now. The market is not pricing in anything wrong. Before we had this reality check right here, it had been 50 years since the market had a stretch like that without a greater than a 1% pullback. I'm 51, man. So Leon and all these guys that are net long, because remember, Jim and I as options traders, in the blink of an eye, we can go from being bullish to bearish. If you have thousands of shares of a stock, first of all, selling stock short don't do it, please. It's incredibly dangerous.
Well, they can't even find the stocks to
they can't
short.
borrow. Yeah,
they can't borrow. They can't even borrow, man.
So remember this, folks. Most huge Leons and smart, Jeffrey Gunlocks and folks, they're sitting there net long, man. They're not options traders in their F-18s being able to pull 9Gs in the blink of an eye. They're flying an A380 Airbus and can't really turn that much. Always remember that. So Leon Cooperman on a CNBC interview and a couple other folks I've heard lately can't really sit here and go, holy crap, we think everybody's lying and this thing's horrific. Let's just cover some stuff. Saturday afternoon, watching my son's hockey game, this came out. The White House doesn't trust China's coronavirus numbers. I was like, so in the middle of a long 3-day weekend, they came out with this, and of course, Apple came out with their, we're going broke type of thing. So ladies and gentlemen, for the past month and a half, Donald Trump has said a net 3 sentences on this. It's contained. I talked to Xi. He's a good dude. It's contained. It'll go away in April because it's hot. That's it.
We're good.
Yeah. Let me remind you, and you guys know how I feel about. I think I can't stand the dude. I like the policies. Remember when Barack Hussein Obama was dealing with Ebola? Citizen Trump, you ready for this? Nearly 50 tweets and appearances on Fox News. Here's one of his tweets. I'm going to read this to you. Ebola patient will be brought to the U.S. in a few days. Now I know for sure that our leaders are incompetent. Keep them out of here. Whoa. You ready for the next one? The U.S. cannot allow Ebola-infected people back. Listen to this. People that go to faraway places to help out are great, super people, but must suffer the consequences. Oh my God. So Ebola was treatable. This thing, ladies and gentlemen, is not currently treatable. As of me talking to you right now, we have 29 infected Americans on U.S. soil at military bases. First of all, I don't think I'd ever say that in my entire 51 years on this planet. We actually have people on military bases. The first time, again, this 50 number is weird. 50 years ago was the last time we had a mandatory quarantine of an American. Right now, Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, Travis Air Force Base, Lackland, and up at the University of Nebraska, people are being guarded with guns. Folks, if you're on Marine Corps Air Station Miramar right now, we evac you out, you're not walking to the main gate and going, hey, fellas, thanks, I'll catch you guys later. Does everybody understand that? That we have Americans in this country being forcibly in quarantine. I'm going to tell you, folks, and this is not tinfoil hat theory. Senator Tom Cotton, he's on the Senate Intel Committee and the Armed Services Committee, probably one of the biggest Trump supporters on the Hill. For 2 months, the man has said that this was a biological weapon accidentally released. Wuhan, ladies and gentlemen, has a level 4 People's Liberation Army biolab. It appears that this thing got out accidentally. Did coronavirus originate in Chinese government laboratory? Yes, it did, in my opinion. Now we're seeing these things. Japan is going to use HIV drugs to try and fight this thing. Anybody want to take a guess why? You don't have to guess. I'm going to tell you because I talked to a lot of little birdies still in uniform wearing a lot of stars. They might have been playing with it to make it some sort of super freaking virus. So Donald Trump, years ago, holy crap, keep anything out of our country that's infectious. Donald Trump now, Xi Jinping's fantastic, great dude, everything's fine. You have to decide, folks. That's the other reason that this market is hovering up here right now, is nobody's really kind of looking at each other. And look at this. China's actually burning money. They destroy 600 million.
Oh, yeah, because of the content. Yeah.
Yes. I saw like 2 weeks ago, they showed these when they finally, after the Lunar New Year, people going to banks. These people are like pouring disinfectant on this like barrel of money. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Now they're burning it. So you ready for this? It might not be on the, we're going to talk about this tomorrow in Top Gun Options. Get Long Visa and the credit cards.
Yeah, Matt, your screen share turned off.
Oh, did it? Oh, I'm sorry. Where is it to share? Right there. Look at this, folks. They burnt today $600 million in cash. Wow. They're literally burning money, folks, over in China to reduce the spread of this. Now, if this is some normal, oh, this is just the flu, Whiz, everything's great. I've never seen every country in the world react the way they do. China, Russia closing their country to all Chinese folks. The reason world leaders are going batshit about this, and I say that for a reason, is because of it was the bat thing. I'm not a crazy conspiracy theorist, folks. I have a lot of smart buddies who are in the Pentagon on deployed staffs. So last week on page A12 of the news, because it's all about Trump and impeachment or whatever, 11 military bases in our country have been designated to execute a pandemic plan. One of them is Naval Air Station Fort Worth near DFW. My buddy's the commanding officer of the air station. Whiz, all I can say, I've never seen anything like this, and obviously he wasn't going to say anymore. When I got buddies in the military that are worried, I start getting worried, okay? So I don't even know what symbol we were talking about, but that's what's going on here.
Well,
folks.
no, I think a good point to make is I personally, when I saw Xi with the mask on, that didn't make me more comfortable that he's got it under control. It told me that if the president of the country has to run around with a mask on, that it's out of control. Second thing is with Russia knows how to play dirty. And if they are saying no Chinese in our country, they have pretty good reason to believe that somebody's playing dirty.
Well, the Chinese and the Russian military do a lot of well, and here's the main thing, folks. That people are like, holy crap, this might have come from a lab in Wuhan. Does anybody think that China's got an OSHA? Like, like the occupational. Do you think that the stuff that we do here in America happens in China? They built a hospital in like 48 hours.
Right.
There was no union. There was no safety inspectors. There was. When they put up a Civil War hospital in 2 days, governments don't put up hospitals in 2 days unless there's something bad. So here's what I'm getting at with all of this stuff. We are hovering up. If you look at the market, we're kind of on this ledge. And I have got to tell you that one of the main reasons that we're hovering up here is the Fed. And you're ready for this? The PBOC, folks. The People's Bank of China hasn't thrown the kitchen sink at this. They've thrown the house and the neighborhood.
Right.
They have printed more money and injected more liquidity into Chinese markets and banks than I've ever seen ever. They've banned short selling. Hell, they're arresting journalists for writing bearish articles. I, through a little birdie, heard that, I think it was a week and a half ago, at 3 o'clock it was a Thursday, I think, 3 o'clock one Thursday afternoon, with a bunch of bad news. The market, the S&P 500 climbed like 20 points out of the blue. I threw a little birdie. The People's Bank of China is actually buying U.S. equities. You can take that as a rumor for what it's worth, or I'm full of shit. The people I talk to are pretty damn smart. I also hear that the New York Federal Reserve, the PPT, might have stepped in during some of these things to maybe inject a little with equities, folks. I'm not talking about their QE repo crap. I'm talking about a net buyer of equities. Remember this. And then we'll move on to a couple more symbols.
Yeah.
We usually don't know this stuff until after it happens. I know for a fact the Department of Treasury, the Fed, all sorts of guys have like a page 92 that says in the time of national whatever, they can do. Folks, there's no 13F filing for the Fed. The Fed doesn't have to come out and tell us what they're doing right now, period. And neither does the Secretary of the Treasury. They can be doing stuff behind the doors right now. And if you put the label of national security emergency on it, they can do whatever they want. So if there's been a couple days when I've been trading, I'm like, this thing's going to get smashed into the close. And there it goes all the way magically higher. I'm telling you, folks, this is a hell of a lot worse than they're leading on right now. That's my opinion.
They have a name for it. It's called the Plunge Protection Team.
The PPT, baby,
That's
the Plunge
right.
Protection Team. The New York Federal Reserve has stepped in and bought equities. I will be right. The story will come out after. But this is how we got on note, Jim, was the whole Leon Cooperman saying, hey, this thing will be over in a couple months.
Right.
God bless you, dude.
And a lot of people are saying, that because obviously
Sure.
The alternative of it being more serious and it's going to cause a recession, and it certainly is not what they want to hear. Anyway, having been to China and seeing how they will obviously put on a plate anything that's moving, despite the fact that they may not be clean to put it on the plate.
Correct.
This next stock might be where China will end up going, and this is Beyond Meat. Then they wouldn't have to worry so much about all the germs that come out of monkey brains or dogs or whatever else is going to go on a plate here. You know what I mean?
So again, my sources, they, one last tinfoil hat. You've been dealing with a year-ish of Hong Kong protesters. You can't kill them. You can't go Tiananmen Square. You're screwed, right? And democracy's taken off. You got an island nation called Taiwan. It's not a nation, Whiz. It's our renegade province. How would you silence millions of protesters and also peacefully take over an island nation? Hong Kong's also technically kind of a peninsular island, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
How would you do that? Well, that's what some people wearing uniforms now in the United States government think this thing is to try. They were going to because we have a defense of Taiwan agreement. If China ever invaded Taiwan, we're supposed to come to the rescue, and there's a fight. What if he, went Tiananmen Square on Hong Kong? How about a virus, man? How about a flu? It looks like the flu, and a bunch of people are sick, and you can't leave their house. No more protest, and by the time the thing got, quote, fixed, and, we have the cure, all the, everybody's kind of beaten down. All right, so last 10.
Well, let's talk Beyond Meat, because this is one that went from 240 down to 80. Then it went back up to 140, pulled back to 100. To me, it looks like it took out the 50-day and it took out the 200-day. And, it looks to me like as long as it stays above 100, it might be decent. And if it got above 140, Lord knows what would happen, right?
Not knowing what the stock is and looking at a chart like that, Uncle Whiz says, I don't. So do they even, they have, I don't trade this they do have options on it. Okay, good. I don't get it. I mean, I get it. I've never tried it. I don't get it. I thought the last fight they were having was trying to get in the meat section with, stores, or they were going to sue to try and get it. I don't get this, man. I don't trade it. I don't know. I just don't get the whole concept, man.
I mean, if you want to put parameters around it, 100 and 140 seem to be reasonable parameters as far as support and resistance. And then, is it going to go crazy? Because like I say, if it becomes a situation where meat was involved and now Beyond Meat can play that game. And obviously anybody who wanted to sell it when it went from 240 down to 80, obviously that eliminates the longs.
True.
And after you eliminate the longs, then the short, and all these people that are short, obviously they got to cover as well. So
Correct.
it does
Are
look
they
like
in
it's trying
China?
to turn, but
Do you know? I don't even
I'm,
know. Are they in China?
I wouldn't know, but I would know that they'd probably like to get there because
Pretty quick, yeah.
pretty quick because there could be an opportunity here. Well, here's the big one, and I know you love this stock and you're always following it. So give the insight on Amazon, which was dead money, and then they announced that earnings report, and
Yeah.
it was like Lazarus. It came from dead money to floating.
I said this was like the South; it'll rise again, and I was right. We nailed this, man. So after the Apple earnings, where I sat there and listened to it and went, "Holy crap! I've never seen a more disgusting earnings report." Then came Amazon, when they literally said, "We own the world. We took over Christmas. Everything." You just can't say enough about Amazon. I love
150 million Prime subscribers. That's a
the
lot.
biggest. It's half of America. Technically,
Exactly.
half of America, folks, are Amazon customers. I got to be honest with you. I see more blue trucks than I do the brown or the FedEx trucks, man. The thing is unstoppable. I love the fact that last week Amazon sued the president or the United States government for losing the Jedi contract. Now, the Jedi contract, you ready for this, was $10 billion over 10 years? Jeff Bezos just announced he's donating personally $10 billion of whatever climate change. $10 billion, I think AWS did like $90 billion last quarter or something like that. So it's not the money that they're pissed off that they lost to Microsoft. It's the principle that, and they want to call the president as a witness in this lawsuit if it ever went to trial, because the guy's like, screw Amazon, Jeff Bezos, Washington Post, they shouldn't get this contract. Oh yeah? And then the Department of Defense says, no, it was decided fairly. Okay. The commander-in-chief just said, screw, don't give it to them. So anyway, somewhere in here, I forget what date it was, they also announced what? Amazon files for patent protection for Amazon Pharmacy. Done. That was it. That day, Walgreens and CVS went down like 5%, folks. They are attacking in parallel in every space, and you're ready for this? And space. So, Jim, I can't beat the drum enough about this.
Yeah.
Long-term, uber bullish. Now, I think they will be out of the, and I love the new name here, the MAGA stocks. Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Apple. So we got MAGA instead of FANG. I don't think the liberals like that MAGA stocks.
That's a better acronym, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm hearing that even if this thing does get a little bit worse, kind of like the Netflix discussion we had, people are probably going to be sitting inside ordering from Amazon food. The one lady, I don't know if it was Amazon, but she was on a Diamond Princess and she got wine delivered via a drone. So they're in the drone technology. They're in everything. I mean, and years ago, like 2 years ago, it was Warren Buffett, Jamie Dimon, and Amazon, Jeff Bezos said they wanted to get into the healthcare space. So I just can't. This is insane. They're going to have driverless cars eventually. Those trucks are going to pull up in front of your house. You get a PIN. You go out, enter it. Your package pops out. So the cost of labor is going down. They're going to start with their drone deliveries. And AWS, which back, when they first started, it wasn't even kind of seen as a profit center. It's a massive profit center. And like you said, Jim,
oh yeah,
115 million Prime subscribers.
No, they're at the top of cloud, and they're going to be on the top of the 5G, and they're going to be top of the edge computing, and they're just going to be right in the thick of everything.
This is why, whether it was Beyond Meat or a Netflix, when I say I could deploy my capital to someplace else, this is a known. I mean, you kind of know Amazon's an octopus right now. This is why I call it trading the Death Star. This thing is a floating Death Star that's just taken over the world. So I love Amazon.
And they're wondering why Target and Walmart missed their numbers in December, because obviously everybody shopped on Amazon.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
right. Hey, this next one is a big one. It's Virgin Galactic, and Galactic is exactly the way the chart looks. It's gone from $6 up to $38. Now it's at 30, so it's getting a little wild up here. The air's a little more rarefied than it was. But what are you thinking here? Because I did 103 million shares today, so it's not like
look at that. Yeah.
This is not a Johnny Lunch Bucket deal. There's a lot of people playing this game.
Well, based on Amazon's recent market action, a buddy of mine said Amazon's going Tesla. Now I'm going to say that Virgin's going Tesla. We're getting a couple of these stocks that just start, people are making fortune on trading Tesla, like just sitting there and trading it. Do we look back on a Virgin Galactic, when we got grandkids running around and going, holy crap, I remember when that was 30? So is this one, sticking with the space metaphors, is this literally something that is taking off and isn't going to look back? I mean, obviously it'll level off at some cruise altitude and trade around for a little bit, but they are saying within a year or whenever, they've already booked the first civilian passengers. The real money in this, obviously, folks, aren't the civilian passengers. It's who? It's Uncle Sammy.
Yeah.
I
he just
can
put
tell,
$12 billion into space budget
yeah.
or something.
Yeah, I mean, the president said the other day, we're landing the first person on Mars. By the way, he said is going to, or no, back to the moon is going to be a woman, and they're already talking about the Mars landing. I can confirm that the number one reason Elon Musk, if Jim or I sent out a tweet, if we were the CEO of a company and did the whole funding secured 420 and we caused shorts to lose billions of people, got wiped out, man. I had a buddy who got wiped out his fund. When Elon Musk did that thing, he manipulated the price of the stock. The guy didn't even, he went to court and he thumbed his nose at everybody. You know why? Because his damn space company's putting spy satellites into space. I know that he told the government, he's like, you mess with me, we're not launching your secret super spy squirrel satellite in a month. Oh, really? Phone calls happened, prosecutor. That's what happened with that. Tangent to this story, what I'm getting at is we have massive government bureaucracy called NASA. It did good stuff in the old days when no shit test pilots were test pilots. Now it's a behemoth that doesn't do anything. These guys are the future. I would be, you know what, Jim? Do they trade options? Yeah, there's options on these.
Go ahead and do a leap.
You got it, man. I was going to say I'd hop in my Virgin Galactic out to Jan 22 and buy some calls, man, and put them in a filing cabinet. And look at them in a couple years. I think there's unlimited upside here, but it's a lottery ticket. I'm not super big on lottery tickets until the Powerball gets, I don't know, $250,000. I'd say this is a Powerball ticket that I'd buy.
Hey, before we get into your picks in a minute, just look at GDX and SIL. I just want to get a little feedback on the technical picture because they did have very good size moves, and the gold did close above 1,600.
Mm-hmm.
And again, is this the start of something? Because there's a lot of guys, Dalio, Tudor Jones. They are very optimistic on the price of these metals looking forward, and they've been in a doghouse for a while after a big move. Are they coming out of the doghouse, you think, or is this too early to tell?
No, right now, the doghouse is quarantined, so I think these are good.
Yeah.
I think these are good, man. I mean, look at that meteoric rise here. You know my opinion on gold, Jim.
Yeah.
The gold itself, it's sitting in my closet behind guns in a safe.
Yeah.
I like the physical stuff, but at the end of the day, folks, it's an emotional trade. There's no CEO of gold. There's no earnings. You can't eat it. You can't fly it. Maybe you can put it in a pillowcase and swing it around in prison and beat somebody up with it. But guess what? That's where people are going. And there ain't no, in the old days when Jim and I, when the earth cooled, this was a good hedge against inflation. My God, the Fed's trying to make inflation. But so I'd be bullish on these. The minor, what you said, the GDX, right?
SIL is the silver one, and of course you got the juniors as well.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems the Bitcoin, gold, and silver are getting a bid, and I think it has to do with the national debt and the deficits that are being run, and the zero bonds, the negative yielding bonds. And
Correct.
I think people are just saying, they're messing around with paper currency all around. And the end of the story, may not be fabulous, and so digital gold and hard metal is becoming more interesting. And there's definitely not dummies out there saying part of your portfolio into this thing is not a bad idea. And today was definitely not a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I'd be one of those guys, man. I wasn't. Who was it? Paulson. Not the former Treasury Secretary, the guy that did the housing crisis. He kind of got
Paulson,
squeezed.
right?
Yeah, he got the only reason I was leery and I jumped out of the GLD a couple years ago was because they forced him, a bunch of folks got together and wanted to stick it to him and, kind of drove him nearly out of business. So
Right.
always remember with these things, folks, the minors are a little less, but when you think about it, it's kind of like an option. I mean, we trade options, which are an underlying, it's a derivative of the stock. The minors are a derivative of the damn thing they're going to get. But right now, when I ordered another AR-15 and buying a little bit more physical gold, I think it is absolutely, I couldn't agree more, like you just said, something you'd want to throw in your portfolio. It can't hurt. So
Yeah, I tell you, it's
unless
funny.
it
The
blows.
markets have so many people betting on the Amazons and everybody else, but two of the better sectors is REITs.
Mhm.
And I figure one of the reasons that REITs are doing well, not only do they yield, but some of these guys also own the cell towers that are going to
Correct.
benefit from 5G.
5G. Yep.
And then the other thing is utilities are a never-ending story on the upside lately. And so it's kind of odd to see REITs and the utilities doing so well when we're supposedly having all these great stocks that are doing well. You know what I mean?
Well, there you go. That's another kind of 5 horsemen of the apocalypse type of indicator that things
The same.
aren't normal.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
Right now. But let me, like I joked about earlier, if something ain't doing that you think it should be doing, you're wrong.
Right.
So,
Right.
you got to trade the market you have, not the one you want. So Jim and
Right.
I are kind of, we have these things that in the past they were written in stone, and now
Yeah.
things are kind of written in silly putty. And
Head scratching moments is what we call them. Right?
I'm telling you, man, I'm old enough to remember that RCA dog on the album with his head 90 degrees sideways. And there's been a couple days in the past couple months where I've looked at the screen and gone, that just, let's say this, or I'll say this. If you do have that 90-degree tilt, cash is a position, man. It's a 1 delta trade. It is a great place to be if you're confused. When things aren't doing what you think they should be doing, push back from the table, grab some popcorn and watch, because this literally is uncharted territory. I've never had a President Trump, never had a coronavirus. All these type of things swirling around, we are in uncharted territory, and we still have a VIX. I mean, nice 8% pop today, but we're hanging in the mid-teen. We had the initial freak out and we're hovering. So the VIX is staying elevated, but I guarantee you, Jim and I was in the SIBO and the CBOT when it hit 90, whatever that day was, 80, 90. I was there. So people who think, oh my God, we almost hit 20 on the VIX. I'm like, I almost did 5 times that in the past. So
that VIX is set up right now. It does look like a situation where it bottomed out at 10, went up to 20, pulled back here to 14. And if you ever blow out 20 on another rally, the correction will definitely be here.
Yeah, I could not agree more with that. Getting long volatility right now. You buy vol.
Let's before we run out of time, let's hear a couple of things that you're looking at, and then of course let people know how they can get a hold of you and what kind of special deals you got going.
Yeah, I think the main thing right now would be getting long volatility, buying some puts on the S&P 500. I mean, they can't. Well, one of the things I'd say is this: if first of all, when Jim and I trade options, they're hedged in and of themselves, right? You got limited risk. If you're ever doing, nobody on this webinar should ever do anything, naked calls, naked puts. And I don't even think brokers let you do that today. Maybe the closest thing you could get is a cash secured put, but everything's kind of hedged in the options world. So when I say, hey, make sure you're hedged, I'm talking maybe for an overall portfolio. If a lot of you are like long stock, or I got 1,000 shares of IBM sitting in my account for my dad or something like that. If you're looking to cushion that, I mean, with the market at, last week we were getting these, hey, market closes once again at record highs, despite coronavirus fears. I'm like, look at that headline. Market closes despite. So whenever you see that type of 90-degree off sentence, be very, very careful. So what type of puts would I be looking at? I think if we are going to have some sort of serious, come to Jesus moment, back down here to this 50-day moving average. We did that little test right there when the market, this was the last time I thought we had reality in the markets. So maybe, and they'd be pretty damn cheap right now, puts down at the 50-day moving average. I'd go a month out. I thought this thing would have been, because it really does feel like we're getting death by 1,000 little pieces of news here. You know, if just out of the blue, if Russia had closed, you know, there's not one Chinaman allowed in our country, that would have been a massive news story in and of itself. But when you combine that with, and they're burning money, and this might have been, you know, a bioweapon, and oh, by the way, the cruise ship, and by the way, we got 29 people. It's like death by 1,000 little news stories. So as I told my members today, unless we have a seminal event where, no kidding, a Xi gets on TV or a Trump gets on TV and says, this thing is bad, I think you got to ride it up with the central banks. I've just never seen.
What about the MACD at the bottom of the chart? Is there a bit of a divergence with the new high, or nothing to write home about?
I don't think there's anything super to write home about.
Because you know, you went up to the high at 33 and change,
Yeah.
and then you came down, then you're coming back up to make a new high, but you're not really making new highs on the MACD. And
Yeah.
they said the advanced decline line is not making new highs.
Correct. Yeah, and well,
these are warning signals a bit, right?
I that and the elevated VIX are absolutely warning signals. But you're in a jet. You got a lot of firepower on the jet. You're way above the 200. You're way above the 50. You got momentum. You got guys like Leon Cooperman going, this thing's a blip. He's got to say that, like we talked about, because him saying this thing isn't, and I'm getting out, you would have seen the market turn.
Yeah.
So,
and the warning signal doesn't mean hit the eject button. It just means make sure you know where it's located.
That's exactly right. So that's exactly right. It's a great analogy, Jim. As you're looking around the cockpit here, if you got a couple gauges that are flashing red, it ain't saying eject. It's like, pay attention. And this thing, you know, we're kind of running in the red here. You know, I don't think it's a matter of if, but when we do get some sort of pullback here. Hopefully this thing's contained. This is fully overblown, but my God, it was medieval, you know, looking at smoke plumes over Wuhan and hearing that, you know, their crematoriums are working 24/7. And so all these cities are shut down, but they have these big thermal things. You know, when you start putting all this stuff together, I think it's a hell of a lot worse than they're telling us. They're obviously doing we're not going to tell you how bad it is because we don't want you to panic. But guess what? When we find out it's worse than they're telling us, then we over panic. So anyway, what do I like? All the names that we kind of covered in here that I said I'd like. I like that Boeing. Apple's, it's levitating up here, guys, but be very, very careful. I also like Raytheon and UTX in the defense sector. All the defense stocks like a Raytheon or UTX, United Technologies, have ignored this virus stuff. As a matter of fact, God forbid it does come out or it is proven that this thing was a bioweapon accidentally released, I think we might see a rally out of the defense stocks. But anyway, so one of the best ways to get airborne here at Top Gun Options would be to just join our it's called Solo Amazon. All we do in that is trade Amazon. We also trade XLY because XLY is an ETF made up of 25% Amazon. Plus, when you're trading at $2,100 stock, you ain't swinging around too many contracts of Amazon. You know, our long call diagonals or synthetic stock have 1 or 2 contracts in them. So we also trade XLY in that portfolio. It's only $97. Or you can do an annual and get a 25% discount. Pretty easy. You go to go.topgunoptions.com/solo, and we'll throw in those skill-based manuals, your primary, intermediate, and advanced workbooks. Those things are $197 if you went to our webpage to go buy them individually. So technically, I'm throwing $100 back in your pocket by only doing 97. So that's what I got. So Jim, great working with you, my friend, and looking forward to next time.
Okay, you bet, Whiz. And again, take advantage of that so you can get up to speed with what's going on at Top Gun. I'm Jim Kenney. I have a weekly update that I send out. If you'd like to receive it, just go to optionprofessor@gmail.com and we'll put you in the queue. Right now, I'm throwing it back to David Kosmider. And again, Whiz, thanks for showing up here.
You bet, Jim. We'll see you.
All right, thanks, guys. Lots of good info today. So just a quick reminder to everyone watching, be sure to subscribe to Timing Research on YouTube and your favorite podcast network. And you can also go to TimingResearch.com to get access to this show, the archive of this show as soon as I can get it posted, or any of the previous shows. And Matt, great to have you back today for today's episode. So Matt Buckley of TopGunOptions.com, and Jim, thanks for moderating. Jim Kenney of OptionProfessor.com. Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you guys. Bye.